The Dominion's laughter echoed through the ruined battlefield. Master Sergeant Cole Washington blinked blood and sweat from his eyes, forcing himself upright against the wreckage of their downed transport. His leg burned, a jagged gash cutting through his fatigues, but pain was secondary. Pain meant he was still alive. "Still breathing, Sarge," came a voice to his right. Staff Sergeant Elias Dutch Martinez pushed himself to his knees, his arm limp at his side, dark with fresh blood. His tanned skin was streaked with dirt, his normally sharp brown eyes dulled by pain. Washington took stock, for others remained. 6 Green Berets out of the 12-man unit, sent to sabotage a Dominion forward base. The mission had gone south the moment their transport was struck by an unseen orbital weapon, sending them crashing into an uncharted jungle on this alien hellhole. The Dominion patrol had arrived soon after, expecting corpses. Corpses, Washington thought bitterly, or prisoners to parade. That was the Dominion way. A few yards away, a group of Dominion soldiers loomed in the dimming light, their exoskeletal armor gleaming under the planet's twin suns. They stood tall, too tall, towering over the wounded humans, with their elongated limbs and chitinous plating. One of them, a hulking officer with deep crimson markings across his armor, barked something in their guttural tongue. The others erupted in rasping laughter. Private First Class Logan Reeves, the youngest of the squad, shifted beside Washington, his freckled face twisted with barely restrained fury. "What's so funny?" he muttered, voice hoarse. "They think we're done," Washington replied, voice low. He didn't need to understand their words to recognize mockery. The Dominion considered them broken, weak, already dead. A sharp, insectoid voice cut through the air, followed by another round of laughter. One of the aliens, smaller than the others but still formidable, pointed at Washington and mimicked a pathetic crawl, its mandibles clicking in amusement. The others joined in, their chittering voices oozing contempt. A metallic clink landed near them. A Dominion ration canister. A taunt. Washington clenched his jaw, forcing himself to remain still. Now wasn't the time. The aliens were armed, healthy, and armored. His men were bleeding, half-conscious, and outgunned. But not out. Never out. The Dominion soldiers lost interest quickly. This was a waste of their time. One of them sneered something that made the others chuckle as they turned away, their laughter fading as they marched back toward their landing craft. They hadn't even bothered to take the Green Berets' weapons. To them, a wounded human with a rifle might as well be unarmed. Washington exhaled slowly. "Dutch status." Dutch gritted his teeth as he tested his injured arm. "Bad, but I'll live. Pretty sure it's dislocated." Reeves. "Couple cracked ribs. Maybe worse. Not dead yet." Ramirez. Sergeant First Class David Ramirez, their explosives expert, gave a grim nod. His face was paler than usual, a bad sign. "Lost a lot of blood, but I can still blow things up, so that's something." "Good," Washington said, scanning the others. 2 more remained, Master Corporal Thomas O'Connor, their sharpshooter, and Staff Sergeant Will Mac McAllister, their field medic. Mac was already at work, pressing a makeshift bandage against Ramirez's side. "We need real supplies," he muttered. "And soon." Washington nodded. "We're not waiting around to die. We move. Now." Reeves frowned. "Sarge, we're barely standing." "Then we crawl," Washington snapped. "We don't sit here waiting for them to come back and finish the job." The others didn't argue. They knew the rules. Movement was survival. With great effort, they pulled themselves from the crash site, slipping into the dense jungle beyond. The Dominion's arrogance worked in their favor. The aliens hadn't bothered to secure the area. For now, the jungle swallowed them in humid darkness. Towering alien trees loomed above, their bioluminescent vines pulsing with eerie green light. Insects large, Armored things with too many legs skittered through the underbrush. The air was thick with the scent of something rotten. They pressed on, each step agony, but necessary. Washington took point, guiding them toward a rocky outcrop that offered cover. They collapsed into the shadows, breathing hard. "We need a plan," Dutch said after a moment. Washington nodded, staring back toward the distant glow of the Dominion landing craft. He could see them in the distance, moving with the arrogance of an empire that had never lost a war. That would change. "We adapt," he said. "We outthink them, outfight them." Reeves exhaled sharply. "With what?" "They've got armor, plasma weapons, and air support. We've got a few rifles, half a medkit, and a pack of pissed-off guys on their last legs." Washington's lips curled into something resembling a smile. "Sounds like a fair fight." Nightfall brought a bitter cold that clashed with the day's oppressive humidity. The jungle, alive with chittering creatures and distant howls, pressed in around them. Every sound carried the weight of potential death. The Dominion patrols weren't searching yet, but it was only a matter of time. Cole Washington crouched in the underbrush, eyes locked on the Dominion landing site. The aliens moved without urgency, their movements almost lazy. They still saw the humans as crippled prey, something to be dealt with later. That mistake would cost them. Behind him, Dutch Martinez tightened the last improvised sling around his arm. The dislocation had been set, but his face remained tight with pain. "I've had worse," he muttered. "You always say that," Ramirez rasped, shifting uncomfortably. His wound had stopped bleeding, but he was weakening. "One day, we're going to find something worse." Dutch grinned. "Yeah, and then we'll just get meaner." Washington smirked, but kept his focus on the enemy. "Mac, how long before Ramirez's no-go?" The medic glanced at their explosives expert and frowned. 12 hours before he can't stand. 24 before he stops breathing. Then we don't have 12. Washington exhaled. "We need weapons. And we need them now." Reeves shifted beside him, cradling his rifle like a lifeline. "Stealing from the guys with plasma rifles and exoskeletons? Sounds easy. Easier than dying here," O'Connor said, his voice cool, analytical. "We get close, watch their rotations, and pick our shot." Washington nodded. "We're not fighting their war. We fight like us. Unpredictable. Precise. We make them think we're everywhere." The plan came together quickly. They wouldn't rush in. They would stalk, learn, then strike. Hours passed. The Dominion soldiers, clad in their advanced armor, moved in predictable patterns, relying on technology to scan for threats. But they weren't looking for humans crawling through the mud, moving like shadows between the trees. Washington's team inched forward, their movements slow, deliberate. The jungle became an ally, its tangled growth swallowing them whole. They reached the outskirts of the landing zone, where Dominion supply crates sat unguarded, because the aliens didn't believe they needed guards. A fatal mistake. O'Connor positioned himself first, his rifle steady despite exhaustion. The first shot was a whisper in the dark. A Dominion soldier, standing near the crates, crumpled before he could make a sound. Washington was already moving, gliding forward to seize the fallen alien's weapon. It was heavier than expected, built for something stronger than a human. He forced his fingers around the grip, adjusting for the alien proportions. A hiss of energy pulsed as he powered it up. Dutch grabbed a second weapon, handing it off to Reeves. Mac secured the Dominion's translator device, its interface flickering with unreadable symbols. Then the mistake. A Dominion trooper turned the corner, mandibles twitching in alarm. Its clawed hand shot toward its weapon, but Ramirez, bleeding, barely able to stand, was faster. He slammed a scavenged combat knife into the alien's throat, twisting hard. A wet gurgle. A body hitting the dirt. Silence. Then an alarm. Washington didn't hesitate. Move. They vanished into the jungle as the Dominion forces erupted into motion. Plasma bolts seared through the trees, burning foliage, scorching the air. The Green Berets ran on instinct, weaving, ducking, evading. The jungle swallowed them whole again. They collapsed in a small clearing a mile away, lungs burning, bodies battered. The Dominion wouldn't give up now. They had seen what humans could do, and they wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Washington checked their stolen gear. The plasma rifles hummed with unfamiliar energy, but they had firepower now. More than that, they had proof. The Dominion bled, and that meant they could lose. The Dominion had stopped laughing. Cole Washington watched from the shadows as alien patrols moved through the jungle, no longer careless, no longer indifferent. They carried their weapons at the ready now, their movements sharp and methodical. The arrogance had cracked. That was the first victory. We stirred the hornet's nest, Dutch muttered, crouched beside him. His voice was low, controlled, but Washington could hear the edge of exhaustion creeping in. They were all running on fumes. Let him swarm, O'Connor said, perched in a sniper's position just above them. His stolen plasma rifle rested in his hands, already adjusted for human grip. Means they're nervous. Washington allowed himself a grim smile. Means they're learning. Ramirez, pale and sweating, shifted against a fallen log. Mac checked his pulse, brow furrowed. He needs real treatment, the medic whispered. I know, Washington said. And that was the problem. They had weapons now, but no medical supplies, no food, and no safe haven. If they didn't act fast, Ramirez would be the first to die, but not the last. A chittering voice carried through the trees. Washington held up a fist, and the squad froze. A Dominion patrol moved just beyond the clearing, their glowing visors sweeping the underbrush. Their mandibles clicked in hushed conversation, scanning, searching. They weren't hunting for survivors anymore. They were hunting threats. Good. Washington pressed 2 fingers to his temple, silent orders. O'Connor shifted his rifle. Dutch and Reeves eased forward, keeping low. They weren't running anymore. They were hunting, too. The lead Dominion soldier, a hulking brute with blue insignia across its carapace, slowed as if sensing something. It raised a fist, signaling for its team to stop. Too late. O'Connor's plasma rifle hummed and fired. The bolt struck the lead soldier dead center, dropping it instantly. Dutch and Reeves erupted from the underbrush, firing in controlled bursts. Washington followed, his stolen rifle kicking hard against a shoulder. The aliens weren't used to this. They weren't used to humans fighting back. The second Dominion trooper stumbled back, mandibles twitching in shock, before Dutch put another round through its skull. The third tried to retreat, its clawed hand reaching for its communicator. Reeves took its legs out first, then silenced it permanently. And just like that, the jungle was quiet again. 3 dead aliens. 3 more rifles. A small victory in the middle of nowhere. Mac moved fast, rifling through the Dominion gear. They've got medkits, he breathed. I can work with this. Washington exhaled. That was the first real break they'd gotten. Then let's move before more show up. They disappeared into the jungle once more. An hour later, hidden beneath thick foliage, Mac worked on Ramirez with steady hands. The Dominion medkit hissed as it activated, its alien gel sealing wounds, stabilizing him almost instantly. Ramirez groaned, eyes fluttering open. Did we win? Dutch chuckled, slumping against a rock. Not yet. But we will, Washington murmured. They weren't out yet. The Dominion still had the numbers, the firepower, the advantage. But they weren't invincible. And now they knew it. The jungle burned. Explosions lit the night, sending fire and smoke curling into the alien sky. The Dominion had abandoned caution, sweeping the jungle with plasma fire, their discipline shattered by frustration. Cole Washington crouched low, watching from the ridge. He could hear the chittering commands below, the clanking of armored boots through the underbrush. The Dominion wanted them dead, needed them dead. That meant the Green Berets had already won. Dutch Martinez adjusted his rifle beside him, a smirk playing at his bloodied lips. They're pissed. Washington nodded. They should be. Hours ago, the squad had rigged stolen Dominion explosives to a supply cache near their main staging ground. When the first patrol moved in, the jungle had erupted. A dozen Dominion soldiers gone in an instant. Now they were scrambling, firing blind, lashing out at shadows. Reeves wiped grime from his face, exhaling through his teeth. We keep this up, we won't even have to fight him. They'll just tear each other apart. O'Connor, perched with his rifle, tracked a distant officer through his scope. Not yet, he murmured. They're still holding formation. If we want to break M, we need a kill that matters. Washington followed his gaze. The Dominion commander, taller than the others, his carapace etched with golden markings. He stood near the burning wreckage, barking orders. His troops flinched at his commands, desperate to regain control. Washington's mind worked fast. The Dominion weren't like humans. They weren't built for chaos. Cut off the head, and the body collapsed. He tapped O'Connor's shoulder. Take the shot. The sniper exhaled slowly. A heartbeat passed. Then, a single plasma round, cutting through the smoke. The Dominion commander's head snapped back, mandibles twitching in shock. For a moment, his body remained standing, as if refusing to accept death. Then he crumpled. Silence. Then pandemonium. The Dominion forces panicked. Some fired wildly into the trees. Others hesitated, looking for new orders that wouldn't come. The chain of command had snapped, and the fear they had once dismissed, fear of the humans, finally took hold. Washington didn't wait. Move. The Green Berets descended like ghosts. Plasma fire tore through the clearing. Washington dropped 2 soldiers in quick succession, the stolen rifle heavy but familiar in his grip. Dutch and Reeves flanked left, cutting through disoriented Dominion forces. O'Connor provided cover from above, each shot deliberate, lethal. The Dominion scrambled to regroup, but the jungle was no longer theirs. It belonged to the soldiers who had adapted, endured, and refused to break. Within minutes, it was over. The Dominion survivors scattered, abandoning weapons, abandoning their dead. Some fled into the jungle, others back to the landing site. The Green Berets stood in the wreckage, breathing hard, weapons still raised. Ramirez, pale but standing, chuckled weakly. So, did we win yet? Dutch grinned, reloading. They're running. That's a win. Washington surveyed the battlefield. They had come here as an elite unit, sent to disrupt an enemy force. They had been shot down, wounded, outnumbered. And yet, they had adapted, learned, survived. Washington keyed his stolen communicator, switching to an open Dominion frequency. Static crackled, then the guttural tones of their language. He pressed the transmitter. We're still here. Then he cut the signal. Let them hear it. Let them remember. The jungle belonged to the humans now.